Let's talk about gold. Right now, the precious metal is smashing every record in the book. But this isn't just a story for Wall Street. This is a story about the health of our entire global economy. And what it's telling us is something that honestly, everyone should be paying attention to. Okay, so get this. For the first time ever, the price of gold has blasted past $4,000 an ounce. I mean, that is a staggering number. You'd think investors would be celebrating, right? Popping champagne? Well, they're not.
In fact, that's a direct quote from one market expert. And he is definitely not alone. A lot of the smartest people in the room are looking at this record-breaking price, not with excitement, but with a real sense of dread. And that brings us to the very heart of what we're talking about today.
Why is this massive, historic high being met with fear instead of a party? What is this crazy price spike actually a signal of? Well, that's the mystery we are going to unravel.
So, let's get into why this isn't just some number on a screen. It's really more like a global warning light, and it is flashing bright red.
The best way to think about gold is like this. It's the heart rate monitor for the world's financial health. It's a perfect analogy, really. A steady, stable price, that's a healthy, steady heartbeat. But a massive, sudden spike, like what we're seeing right now, that's the monitor beeping like crazy. It's telling you the patient, our entire global system, is in some kind of distress. So the first question is, what's wrong with the patient?
And a huge part of that answer is a fundamental power shift that's happening as we speak. It's the story of how the longtime king of finance is, well, starting to lose its crown. For decades, for as long as most of us have been alive, the rule was simple. When a crisis hit anywhere in the world, people ran to the US dollar. It was the ultimate safe haven. But that rule is being broken. As you can see here, people aren't running to the dollar for safety anymore. They're running to gold. And we're not talking about a small dip either. The US dollar just went through its worst 6-month drop in half a century. 50 years. So while the dollar's been falling, gold has been on this absolutely relentless climb. The big question, of course, is why?
Well, it boils down to something called the debasement trade. It sounds kind of fancy, but it's really simple. It's what happens when investors start to lose faith in money that's backed by a government. They start to worry that the promises behind their dollars or their euros are getting weaker. And when that happens, gold starts to look incredibly good because its value doesn't depend on any government's promise.
So why are people losing that faith? Well, it's kind of a perfect storm. First, there's a lot of political pressure on the US central bank, the Fed, and that makes people question its independence. Second, you've got trade tariffs stoking fears of inflation, which just eats away at the value of your cash. And third, interest rates are super low, so just holding cash earns you next to nothing. It's a situation where gold just can't lose. If interest rates are low, gold looks attractive. If inflation kicks up, gold is the classic way to protect yourself. It's a win-win for gold.
Okay, this is where the story really gets bigger, because this crisis of faith isn't just happening with regular investors. The biggest players on the planet, we're talking entire countries, are actually the ones leading this race to gold. This timeline shows you just how dramatic the shift has been. Back in the early 2000s, central banks were actually getting rid of their gold. But then 2022 happened. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the West froze Russia's dollar reserves, and that sent an absolute shockwave around the globe. Other countries had a sudden realization, wait a minute, our dollar savings could be used as a weapon against us. The reaction was immediate. Stop relying so much on the dollar and start buying physical gold you can keep in your own vault.
And they are buying on an unbelievable scale. We're talking about central banks snapping up about 1,000 tons of gold per year. This isn't a fluke. It's a deliberate, strategic pivot away from a dollar-dominated system.
So who are the big buyers here? You've got countries like India, Poland, the Czech Republic. But the most important player, the real heavyweight in the room, is China. It's already the world's biggest producer and consumer of gold, and its central bank is one of the key buyers, all part of a larger plan to build a world that's less dependent on the American dollar.
But look, this story isn't just about governments and high finance. A huge reason for this gold rush is that it's now easier than it has ever been for regular people like you and me, to get a piece of the action.
And that's all thanks to this invention called an ETF, an exchange-traded fund. To put it simply, it's a way to invest in gold just as easily as you'd buy a share of stock. You don't need to worry about a giant safe or hiring a security guard. You just need a normal brokerage account.
I mean, this slide says it all, right? The old way was a hassle. You had to buy a physical bar, figure out where to store it securely. The new way? It has opened the floodgates. It's allowed a massive wave of new money to pour into the gold market from everyday investors all over the globe.
So all of this, the fear, the central bank buying, the easy access, it brings us to the biggest question of all. Anytime you see a price go straight up like this, you have to ask, is this for real or is this a giant bubble that's just waiting to pop?
It really is the question on everyone's mind. And sure, maybe some major geopolitical event like a big peace treaty could cause the price to dip for a bit. But the forces pushing gold higher seem to be much, much deeper than your typical market craze.
The truth is, we're living in a pretty fragile world right now. Old alliances between countries are getting shaky, new power blocks are rising up, and there are these deep, simmering tensions everywhere you look. This isn't just short-term market noise, it's a reflection of the entire world order being reshuffled.
And this quote just nails it. As long as all of this global instability is the new normal, then the demand for something timeless, something that's a true safe haven like gold, is probably not going anywhere. The gold rush at the end of the day is a symptom, not the actual disease.
So, we end up right back where we started, but with a much clearer picture. That record price of gold, it's not really a story about gold. It's a story about trust, about power, and about a world desperately searching for safety in very uncertain times. Which leaves us all with one last thing to think about. What is the price of gold really telling us about the future of the money in our own pockets?
El gossip que